Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar interview with Medal of Honor recipient Harold Fritz. I am Noelle Wall. I'm the Director of Education at the Congressional Medal of Honor Society, and we are excited that you are joining us today. We have a fairly new platform for our webinar, so I want to make sure that you're all familiar before we start. You have full control over your view of the webinars and which tools you can see. So you can open and close items and drag them around to different parts of your screen. We do recommend that you keep your media player the current size or larger so that you can see our interview today. You will also see some slides available on your screen, as well as some speaker bios to learn a little bit more about the folks who are going to be doing our interview today. Across the bottom, you'll see a dock with some additional tools. The orange icon with the question mark is a Q&A tool, which will allow you to submit your question. Please type any question you have for us in that box. You will also see a paperclip icon, which includes some related links and content for you to explore, including a blog post about the history of Medal of Honor Day. On the dock, there are also options to contact us with questions about things unrelated to the webinar, or to share this webinar with your friends and colleagues. And there's also an attendee chat, which will allow you to connect with other webinar attendees. And with no further ado, I will turn our presentation over to Kathy Metcalf, who is the Executive Director of Education for the Congressional Medal of Honor Society, and our special guest today, Harold Fritz. Kathy?
Thank you. It's good to have everybody here today. And Lieutenant Colonel Fritz, thank you so much for joining us. Is it all right if I call you Hal during this presentation today?
Absolutely.
Super. Well, I want to say hello to all our audience and let them know that we have a lot of teachers here with classrooms, and we are dealing with a little bit of background noise, so know that we're working on that. But as we go through questions today, our primary audience is indeed teachers who are visiting with classrooms. So those of you who are dialed in and are not teachers, please don't think we're ignoring you. Just know that our first audience is our students today. So Hal, thank you for joining me. We're in Medal of Honor Week here. We are coming up on Medal of Honor Day, which is the national day to recognize Medal of Honor recipients. And so first, I'd like to have the audience get to know you a little bit and so I'd like you to tell us a little about yourself, where you grew up, and what led you to join the military service.
Oh, okay, sure. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and my parents, their parents, on my mom's side, are Polish, and they immigrated from Poland. And on my dad's side, my grandparents immigrated from Germany. My dad and mom met in Chicago and were, in fact, members of a motorcycle club. We moved to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin in 1949, and that's where I was raised, at Lake Geneva, and had a pretty good time, had a pretty good youth, and a lot of my relatives had served in the military in all the services except the Coast Guard. I had one in the Air Force and one in the Navy and one in the Marine Corps and several in the Army. So I had that type of family background for me to look at and for those folks I could talk to get some feel for what the service was like. And I had a really great time as a youth. A lot of we were raised, I went to Catholic school, and I went to public school. We were the first class to graduate from the high school at Lake Geneva. I met my wife while I was in high school, and in fact, we got married after I finished part of my college. And that's the gal that I'm married to now. She stayed with me for 56 years. We've got 4 children, and we've got 11 grandchildren. But as I was growing up, and after I recently had gotten married, I was going to school and working, and I needed to spend more time working as opposed to going to school. And when I dropped some of the school hours, that was the time that left. and I received a notice that I was going to be invited to join the United States Army as a draftee. And at the time, it was not convenient for me to go because I just got married. I was trying to get things up. I was trying to avoid service, but it was just rather an inconvenient time. So I talked to an Army recruiter, and he suggested that I could get a delay in my entrance to the United States Army if I enlisted. So I enlisted, and I went in and took the test that they administered to see where you would fit into the United States Army's group of individuals and the various jobs that they have. I thought having a lot of, some college and a pretty solid background with the family, and I thought I knew an awful lot, and I took the test, and the Army recruiter told me that I was expecting him to say, you qualified to be at least a senior sergeant or an officer, but he told me I qualified to be a tanker, enlisted tanker. At the time, I said tanker. I knew about tanks, but I didn't know much about tankers. So I went in as an enlisted man, and then after I got into the service.
So Hal, let me interrupt you for just a minute here before we go on into the service. You mentioned that, you had been in school, and so I'm going to, for the sake of our students who are listening, ask a couple of questions that I think they might want to know. I think that they might want to know, when you moved to Lake Geneva, I heard in another interview you mentioned that you moved with your mom and dad and 5 Harleys. Were you one of the people riding Harleys when you moved?
No, at the time I was 5 years old, but that led me to an adventurous youth filled with lots of motorcycles. So we had a lot of fun riding motorcycles. Unfortunately, as I was a junior in high school, we had a bad accident. My mom was riding an individual that was drunk and amputated my mother's leg and threw us into the hospital for quite some time. But she, even though that occurred, she was not down on motorcycle riding. She knew what had happened and encouraged me to continue. And I eventually sold my motorcycles because I felt that it impacted my mom. But we had quite a career. My mom and dad rode a lot, and I rode a lot. Up until the time of the accident, we were involved in a lot of motorcycling with the big Harleys, and enjoyed that.
That's great. Well, I think that your story plays up for our students, both sides, both the positive and social side of motorcycle riding, but also the potential hazards that, like anything, it's got some serious potential consequences when other people may not know what they're doing. So great lessons there for our students. I also heard read that you were looking at going into elementary education when you were in college. You were thinking about being a teacher, is that right?
That's correct. And as a matter of fact, opportunity while in the service to qualify for an educational program sponsored by this, and I went to the University of Tampa and completed by seeking a degree in education, and got that degree, which is fantastic. I went through student teaching, and I was offered a position in the Florida school system, but the United States Army looked at it and said, I was a captain at the time, Captain Fritz, you went to school for 18 months, sponsored by the United States Army. I said, that's correct. And I've got a fantastic job opportunity here as a teacher. And they said, but, and I heard the but, and I knew there was trouble here. But you owe us 2 years of service based on that alone. And so we can't let you go now from the United States Army. We're going to send you to Germany, to the Federal Republic of Germany. And so I was unable to, in fact, pursue that. But I would have been very, very excited about teaching. That's what I wanted to do. And it was certainly short-circuited for a bit there for about 27 years, as a matter of fact, by the United States Army.
So that 2 years that you owed the Army then turned into 27 years of service. And I hear you constantly talk about the importance of service. So you want to tell us why did you decide to stay 27 years?
Well, when you look at again young people, and as a result of my positions that I held as a captain, I was in the leadership committee of Fort Benning Infantry Center. I was at Fort Knox, Kentucky. I was with a committee down there that taught cavalry instruction. And I thought, and I got back from Vietnam, and I thought, it's important for me to look at trying to provide these young officers and non-commissioned officers and enlisted personnel that are in the service that are going to be committed at some time to perhaps a combat situation, give them my best shot on how to be able to both be effective on the battlefield, how to survive on the battlefield, and return to their families. And that just kind of drove me. My wife understood where I was coming from, and she supported me fully on that, because we needed to be out there as an example of how you can survive, how you can be effective, how you can take care of your people, because you've got two things in mind. You've got your mission accomplishment, and you've got to take care of your people at the same time. And that's a difficult balance to maintain, but it can be done, and it takes a lot of hard work. But I can say in the 27 years that I served in the United States Army that I've always put my men as in the forefront of my thoughts in terms of getting them back to their families. And I told them, I said, if you're wounded on the battlefield, I'll get you evacuated. If you're killed on the battlefield, I'll make sure you return to your family. My aim, though, is to bring you all back in one piece. But in a cavalry unit, I was with the 11th Cav in Vietnam. You're going to be in a situation where that's not perhaps possible in every case, and it wasn't in some cases. So it's important, and that's why I stayed in, because I felt that we could do that. And later on, I served at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and I was responsible for getting the National Training Center at Fort Irwin started in 1981. And you find now, if you go to the National Training Center, where the forces are a force-on-force with a U.S. unit out there that acts as the opposing forces, you find through the National Training Center, statistically, they suffer 50% fewer casualties than units that don't rotate through the National Training Center. So there again, it was a contribution I helped make happen, and something that was very important to me, and today it still is important. I mean, we gotta respect those that put the uniform on, because we don't have a draft anymore. It's all volunteer services, and there's a lot of advantage coming into the service, but there's also the hazards, and you have to keep that in mind.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I'm hearing you say a lot about leadership, and what I read beforehand and what I read in your citation. And I want to mention to our listeners that the citation for Hal's Medal of Honor is available on the website, cmohs.org. And you can also, of course, Google Lieutenant Colonel Harold Fritz, U.S. Army, and read the citation and a lot of other things about Hal. But what I saw over and over again was cited leadership. And now I'm also hearing training, and I think those things go hand in hand. You want to talk a little bit about the importance for our students of training in whatever it is that they do?
Exactly. And in the military, that's ultimately important. You've got to train, you've got to drill, you've got to retrain, you've got to drill. But it doesn't matter whether you're in the military or you're seeking your career in another field. It's something that you've got to, I always say this, look at going after that platinum ring, the highest thing you could reach, the highest goal you can set for yourself. And it's going to be tough. You get out there and you're going to face challenges. And, once you get up there, once you get to the top and you manage to get to that goal that you set for yourself because you worked hard, you've trained hard, you have other team members, and you look back and you say, damn it, it was worth it. Because look what I can do in terms of contributing to the great country that we have today, and what I can do to contribute to others that are seeking the same path as I just have sought. So you can't get into a hole and say, God, that's just going to be too hard for me. There's a lot of peer pressure, and I don't know. You're the person that makes that decision. not the peers around you. Now, you've got teachers and you've got administrators. Those are kind of guideposts. You can go to them and say, hey, I really got an idea. And sometimes it's harder to talk to your parents than it did is to the people in the school, because you just feel more comfortable. And ask them, say, here's what I'm looking at. What do you think? And they'll give you the guidepost information, but you make the decision. It's your decision. And so your future is what you want to make it. And it'll go as hard as you want it to, depending on what goals you set. But don't take the easy road. And the example I use as the following: if I was in a situation where it was a combat situation and there was a fork in the road, and an individual comes to me and says, "Well, I've got to reach that objective. It's about 13 kilometers down the road there, and I could take the left fork or the right fork. Which one do you think I'm going to take?" I said, well, I wouldn't take the left fork because there's ambushes along there, there's landmines along the thing, and you'll never reach that goal. But if you take the right fork, it's uphill. It's not the easiest one, but it'll get you there, and you'll feel much better once you reach that goal. I turned my back, and all of a sudden, I hear this explosion, and I turn around, and there's the individual I just talked to. He was taking the left fork, and he stepped on a landmine. He's laying in the middle of the road, and he's dying. And I walk over to him, and I said, what is the difference between the two routes? And you took the worst route. Why? Well, I heard what you said, but this seemed to be an easier one for me. So don't let it be the easiest way. Go the tough way. Take on the challenges. And when you reach that goal, you're going to be thanking your dad, whether you're going into teaching, whether you're going into government, whether you're going into law enforcement, whether you're going to the service. It doesn't matter what you're looking at. Use those guideposts that are out there, but you make the decision. So
choose those guideposts, keep up with the training. And then we have a question from a viewer who asked something that I think fits with that, in that part of those guideposts are probably the leaders that you ran into along the way. And one listener says, can you remember the day your service started and ended? And during the time you were in the service, are there any particularly close relationships that you made with people you served with? And do you still stay in touch with any of those people?
Oh, I tell you, I remember the first day I came to the service, I was an enlisted man, and they put us on a bus and said, on the bus, this is the draft. What a Fort Knox, Kentucky. I'll never forget that. And I said, geez, what a heck of a way to get started. And the last day of the service, I retired I was the base closure officer for Fort Sheridan, Illinois, which under base realignment and closure was one of the posts that was closing. And your last assignment, you try to be kind of a nice assignment, you ease out. But that was one real stinker because we had a lot going on. The base was closing. People that throughout the service that I really got to know and respected. And one was George Patton, the son of World War II Patton. He was my commander, and our careers kind of paralleled.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, I thought that was kind of, that was kind of neat. He was just a good commander, and he let you run the show. I was a company executive officer and a commander on a Medal of Honor battle. I still keep in contact with every one of them. One of them is kind of interesting, but my wife and I were going to one of the unit reunions, 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, and we walked in the lobby of the hotel, and this gal came up to me, and she gave me this huge hug, and I didn't know her from Adam. Of course, my wife just kind of looked at me like, what's going on here? And she said, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for saving my husband. And then her husband came forward. That was James Caldwell. James Caldwell, during my Medal of Honor firefight, was in a vehicle. He was put in a vehicle that was hit by a recoilless rifle caught on fire. He was on fire. They laid him down. He was bayoneted twice by the enemy, and we got him evac out of there, and we didn't know whether he'd live or not. He did survive. He did live. He spent almost 2 years in the hospital, and he thanked me for bringing him back to his family, and his wife thanked me also. That was it. And I still talk to Jim, and I talked to the medic I had. It was his first experience in combat, 19-year-old young guy from New Jersey. And he said that was the first combat he'd been in. Now, he's been looked at by as the person that's going to save everybody. If you're wounded, this is your medic. The associations that you make in the service are really important. And a more recent one, I went to a veteran function, and I talked to an Afghanistani veteran, and his story was very, very interesting, that he was coming back to the fire base because while he was at the fire base, he was assigned to the burn pit, where they take materials that aren't going to be used and they want to destroy them, they burn them. And so the U.S. military vehicles was backing up to dump its load of burnable materials into the pit. Two little Afghanistani children were there. He said they're always there trying to salvage something. And a truck driver didn't see him, and he started these two young kids into the burn pit. This soldier pushed, and he himself was dumped into the burn pit, severely burned. They thought he was going to be, in fact, he was counted as dying 4 different times. He had lung injuries, all sorts of serious problems, but he didn't quit. I met him at this function, and he and I started talking about taking care of your people and what he was doing, what he was fighting in terms of his health. His men still keep in touch with him. I just talked to him last night because I thought he was doing a great job. He was serving bravely in a most dedicated manner as a soldier. He saved these 2 young children by the fact that he knew it would maybe cost him his whole life. And he was fighting the health issues that he was having. He was back with his family, and he was trying to start up a little business, a little hunting business in Texas. There's this trooper, one of the guys that it doesn't matter, guys or gals, that you get a chance to meet while you're associated with the service, whether you're in the service or you get out as a veteran, and that's the core of this country. It's those that are serving, those that have served, and the people that support those. And that's so great. And young people out there are going to be part of that team. They're going to be responsible, because I'm 77 now. We've got to pass the torch. They're going to be responsible for the future of this country. And so you have to look at those things. You look at how we're treating our military, how we're treating our young people. What type of image are we providing? What type of example are we providing? It's important that we do the best we can every time, and don't be afraid to reach a hand out and extend a hand of help to somebody that needs it, for God's sake. I think that's important.
Absolutely. Great advice there. And advice right in line with the values that you and the other Medal of Honor recipients set forth for the character development program. I want to take just a second and mention to our audience that the Medal of Honor character development program that is sponsoring these interviews like this with Hal has lessons on character values, commitment, courage, integrity, sacrifice, citizenship, and patriotism for our students. Now, a number of you listening already use that, so I would encourage you to be thinking about how points from this interview fit into that, those lessons. And those of you who aren't using it, feel free to reach out to us, and we will make sure that you have all the contacts you need to become familiar with the program. One of the people who wrote in ahead of time, Hal, asked, in 1971, when you received your Medal of Honor, what was the advice you received from the older recipients? And was there anyone in particular of the recipients from whom you got advice that has stuck with you over the years? I noticed, by the way, that we just passed the 50th anniversary of your Medal of Honor award at the White House.
It's interesting that comes up, because when you look at the first thing that is overwhelming when you go in for the actual medal ceremony itself, and for the first time you're standing there, and there's the President of the United States, and the closest that I ever came to the President of the United States, he flew over my unit in Vietnam once, and somebody said, he's in that standing face to face with the President of the United States, and then you're going to be a recipient of the Medal of Honor. And when I received notification of that, I told my wife, we're getting ready to do a PCS move permanent change of station from one military base to another, and we had packed everything up, and I got a call from Washington about the Medal of Honor. And I told her, I said, we can't go anywhere because they want us to go to Washington. And I told her why. And so then, trying to just take all that in, it's awesome. And then when you look at your fellow recipients, you're talking about some of Jimmy Doolittle, some of the other ones, the older recipients that you read about, and suddenly, you're wearing a medal and they're wearing the same medal, and your brothers. It's an organization where there's no rank. It's all first name basis. So you're looking back at geez, there's Jimmy Doolittle and there's so and so, and read about them, and I call them by their first name. So it's somewhat intimidating. But then the older recipients kind of take you under their wing, and they say, "Hey, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you aboard." And there was not a single one, but a group of senior older recipients that took the younger recipients, including myself, the new recipients, under their wing and said, "Hey, here's our organization. We're a brotherhood of soldiers and sailors and Marines. There's only one Coast Guardsman, and he was killed. And we want that brotherhood to be a family." So we call it the Congressional Medal of Honor Society family, because it includes all the recipients and their wives and their families. And didn't start feeling uncomfortable at all. I felt that, a little bit reluctant. First of all, when we got in, I tried to go to many of the functions that they were holding. And quite frankly, some of these older recipients had been doing this for a long time. And, they'd go from one function to the next function and to the next function and finish up at 6 in the morning and be ready to go at 7. And my wife and I, telling you, we were just dragging. So the older recipients pulled you aside and say, hey, listen, Hal, you don't have to go to all these things. We had some of the older recipients that they never lost any steam, for God's sake. It's just, they would just keep on going, including Kathy's dad. He's a dialysis, for God's sake, and you couldn't slow him down. And so you look at their younger recipients and you say, well, come on. Look at the older recipients. So now, what the society does for the newer recipients that come on board, we try to take them under our wing and do the same thing for them that was done for us when we came on board. I've never had an issue or difficulty in dealing with any of the recipients, and I've never found one of the more senior recipients from either World War II or Korea that has said, you young guys don't belong here. I've never had that. They've always be part of us. Be willing to participate. So you don't have to get, family comes first, but be part of our family also. They encourage you to be with your family, bring them along as part of the Congressional Medal of Honor Society family. But don't disregard the fact that you've got your family to be responsible for also.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it's important for us to recognize that there are only 69 living Medal of Honor recipients at this point. And while we try to, and once we get past the pandemic, we will resume this, but we try to arrange school visits so that you can be face-to-face with students and to do as many events as possible. But the reality is, first of all, you do indeed have your families and your personal lives, but there just aren't enough of you to go around in this big country. And so I want to tell you how much we appreciate you taking the time today. And while it's great to reach the whole country, we do look forward to getting some back in school situations, we hope, set up in the future. I want to combine the leadership and what you were just saying about the time you've been in the Medal of Honor Society. Over the course of your involvement with the Society, you spent some time as president of the Medal of Honor Society. And I believe while you were president was probably when we started the Citizen Honors Program, in which Medal of Honor recipients recognize citizen heroes. Do you want to share a little bit about what you think about that program and recognizing our citizen heroes?
I think it's important. You have to realize that every Medal of Honor recipient, and I'm talking about our family of recipients, all of them. Don't feel that we're something special. We just came from a broad spectrum of background. I mean, I go to the schools and I said, my mom wasn't Wonder Woman, my dad wasn't Superman, and I don't have a Superman suit underneath clothes. We're just regular Americans, and we had to do something, make a decision to save lives, and we did that. And that's who we are, just ordinary Americans trying to. So this recipients got together and said, we have citizens out there that, in fact, have done brave things, have done great service, but were never in the military or were not recognized for what they did. We had an older gentleman here in Pekin, and he was teaching chess. And there was an individual that came in with 2 knives in the library, and he was going to stab the kids and stab the librarian. And this particular, who happened to be been one that had some service, but he was in his 70s, got a hold of the guy and wrestled him down. He was wounded himself, but he saved the kids, the children, and he saved the librarian. And I said, we've got to do something special to bring, and they do great things in our country. And so we developed the Citizens Honors Program, where we actually bring the families. We have nominees. You can nominate somebody in your hometown. You can nominate somebody from your school. This doesn't have to be some politician. Just we're looking for ordinary Americans, and you nominees to the Medal of Honor Society. And we have an award ceremony, and we actually bring the families in. Now, we've also recognized those individuals that have done something very valorous, but were killed in the execution of that valor. And we bring in the families of those individuals and present the award in their name. So it's a matter of recognizing ordinary Americans out there that do extraordinary things, besides those that wear the Medal of Honor. And we wear the Medal of Honor. Let me just say that it's not to recognize us. We're simply messengers. We're carrying the message of dedication and valor and sacrifice as we wear our medals and travel around the country. Not to bring the spotlight on us, but to bring the spotlight on the sacrifices of the men and women that have served and are serving and will serve. And so the Citizens Honors is kind of an element of that, where we want to say, hey, this is part of the team that makes this country so damn great. You know what I mean? Oh, there goes my phone. I got excited.
Absolutely. And that's, well, I think that I appreciate you having mentioned that, because that's part of what has made up Medal of Honor Day was not only those of you who are recipients of the Medal of Honor going to Arlington and placing a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. And just for our audience, and for those who might not be aware of it, all the unknown soldiers interred at Arlington were bestowed the Medal of Honor before they were buried there. That was part of that ceremony. And yep. So, recognizing fellow Medal of Honor recipients and, of course, all the veterans. I have a mental image of being there on Medal of Honor one day Medal of Honor Day one time when we walked from the tomb down to the lawn below, and watching you yourself, Hal, stop and look out over those graves and salute. And that's a mental image that has stayed with me forever, that recognition of your fellow service people. And then to extend that to citizens, I think, is a really important part of a life of service. And it also fits in with the Medal of Honor Character Development Program, because it allows us to incorporate those citizen honors awardees into the lessons, so that students who don't choose to go into military service can become so much aware of the fact that there is space for service in all our daily lives. Fortunately, most of us will never be in a position like you were in your military service, where we are called upon to do something that is indeed at the risk of our lives. But we have seen a lot of it in civilian life these days, not just in crisis times, like when there have been natural disasters or crimes being committed, but also recently in the course of the pandemic. I would like to in fact, address a couple of questions that have just come up. Both, we have one that was sent in earlier and one that came in just now about what advice you might have for students who are indeed have been dealing with the pandemic and having their lives upended and perhaps having lost people that they loved. And as you go into this, I want to mention that I noticed in another interview that one of your first jobs in the Army was receiving inductees, and part of that was making sure they had their vaccines. So you want to talk a little bit about the pandemic and how students can get through disrupted lives?
Oh, it's we're living in a time right now that's very difficult for Americans, and it affects everyone. So if you look at young people in the school system and how that's been convoluted and just jacked around to the point where one day you're homeschooled and one day you're in class, you don't have that association with your fellow students that you used to have in the years past before the pandemic, and it's a difficult situation. And then you have the home environment where mom and dad are perhaps working out of home, and at the same time you're trying to do classroom work, and it's not an easy situation. It's almost the same situation you face when you're in a combat zone. How are you able to accomplish everything and maintain some kind of tranquility or normalcy? And it's something you really have to work at. Not the easiest thing to say. We've been through it here in my family, and my daughter-in-law's a teacher, right? And my other son-in-law, he's a resource officer for school, and it shows on the kids. It shows on the young people, rather not kids or young people, the young Americans. And my suggestion to you would be to try to we're going to get back to a normal situation here later in the year. If you could just hang in there. It's a tough situation. Just consider yourself to be a person that's in a combat situation, and the war is going to be over pretty soon, and everybody will go back to normal again. But meantime, don't lose your cool. I mean, it's hard to say, how can I maintain any resemblance of order when I've got all this disorder around me? It's not an easy task, but you're going to be a better person once it's over. You're going to be a stronger person once it's over. You're going to be a more focused person once it's over. So looking at all that at the end, work towards that, because you'll be a better person for it. And use the resources available.
Yeah, thank you. So take advantage of those lessons that come out of the adversity.
Absolutely. And you talked about, and Kathy talked about the character development program. And when I was president, that's when it started. And it started as a spark. It sparked pretty soon because people realized the benefit of using the character development program. It turned into a brush fire. And then the brush fire developed into a massive fire, a positive one, though. And it's just it's a fantastic tool to be used to look at how people survived in situations, how you apply the principles that we're talking about. And people say, well, what do you get out of it? What's the bit of it? What's the penny you get out of it? The penny we get out of it, the recipients get out of the fact that we're able to influence people to do the right thing for the right reason. Not a monetary kickback, but the feeling that that's going to happen. If you reach 10% of the students, if you reach 7% of the students with that, you're being successful, because that's what the goal is. We want to get out there and touch everyone, give everyone the opportunity to be exposed to the character development program because of the positive nature of that particular program and the potential for that program. It's there. Use it.
So to that exact point, one of our viewers asked, for the students who have indeed been participating in the Medal of Honor Character Development Program, how do you think they can best share what they are learning with their peers?
I think you take the examples that you examine during the character development sessions and turn those into teaching tools for your peers. You be the teacher, they be the students, and explain how they can apply what you learn in a character development program to everyday life lessons. I mean, it's right there. You peel them and they're back, and there it is. It says, this is how you need to live. This is the fact you're going to face challenges, how to meet these challenges. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of them. Take them on and go after them, but here's the best way to do it. And that's the whole thing. I mean, there's so much of that program. I can't say enough positive about it because, again, I think it's the right tool. It's the right tool at the right time for the right audience.
Well, and the point of that is to fold in what you were saying earlier, really, about training, is that if we can encourage students to look at great examples and stop and think about what it means to exhibit courage and to practice a life of commitment and integrity, that then when they find themselves in a difficult situation, whether they join the military and end up in combat, or whether they have to get on through something like this pandemic, or they have a difficult life, that when the time comes, when they are faced with a really severe challenge, that they will find themselves living those values as opposed to having to just think about them and talk about them, which is what you demonstrated in action. You responded.
Yeah, it's somebody said, what's the difference between a hero and a coward? And I think you can apply that to everyday life. It's a matter of 2 seconds. You're faced with a situation where you as an individual can influence it, and you either charge into it and embrace it, or you turn around and say, let somebody else take care of it. Well, let's all be heroes and not cowards. We can do that if we work together.
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier that you have 11 grandchildren, and I happen to know that some of them are still very young. And also you were trained in elementary education. We have a viewer who inquired about your thoughts about incorporating this program into elementary lessons. And we, of course, added an elementary segment of the Medal of Honor character development program just a few years ago. Well, actually, now it's been almost 5 years. So we do have an elementary segment. What do you think about incorporating these values into the elementary school level?
I think it's important. I think that's an excellent place to start. And I don't think it's too early. And smart. They're smart. No, I mean, I give you an example. I'll get my 2.5-year-old, almost 2-year-old granddaughter down here, and she knows how to work the computer on the television. Holy Christ! And so don't bypass them saying, well, they're just too young. They don't know. They know. They want to. They're eager. They want to learn more. So if we can set a good foundation down for young people at the elementary level, it's going to help them when they launch into the next phase of their education, and they'll want to get that next phase of their education and follow up, because education is important. And so I think it is. I think it's right, and I think it can be applied properly at the elementary level.
And I also would point out for anyone for the person who actually asked that, and also for anyone who's contemplating whether this program is appropriate for the elementary level, that the elementary lessons, for the most part, are indeed focused on the character values, and they don't generally rely on the Medal of Honor histories as far as what the Medal of Honor action involved. We absolutely understand that Medal of Honor actions were usually a result of the worst times in battle, and that is too graphic information for very young children. So the lessons were built by elementary school teachers themselves in a way that is appropriate for and using materials that are regularly used in classrooms for elementary level students. If you have upper elementary students, then you can decide based on your classroom makeup whether they are old enough, mature enough to indeed listen to videos of Medal of Honor recipients telling their stories, but always the rule for all levels is preview the video. always a good idea to preview the video. Let's see. From here, we have, we're getting close to the end of our time, but we have a student, have had a couple students who ask if you might have any particular advice for students who indeed are thinking about going into the military. As you pointed out, it's now an all-volunteer military, no more draft. So if they're going, they're making the choice.
And here's what I have to say to that. Now, I served 27 years in the Army, but I would say go to each of the military services, because now there's a lot of opportunities out there. And if you go to the Marine recruiter, he's not going to say all you can do is carry a rifle and assault off the beaches. The Army's not going to say all you can do is be in a tank. There's a lot of opportunities in all these services, but go down there and there's no commitment. They won't hit you with a slapjack, throw you in a sack, and you wake up 3 days later in Fort Huachuca. I mean, it's just it's an opportunity. They want good people in the services, and you want to get the best out of the service. And they'll lay out the opportunities for you with the commitment and what it takes, and then look at each of those and decide: is this for me? Is this service for me? It's the service for me, and make your decision. But don't bypass it, and don't. You talk to somebody that's been in earlier conflicts. You'll go back to World War II and beyond that. And I say, yeah, well, you'd be sitting out there and you'd be in the rain, sleeping in a mud hole with a rifle in your hand. That's not the case. That's not the case anymore. I mean, there are positions for infantrymen and there are positions for tankers, but there are a lot of other positions. Now we got the cyberspace, and we got there's automation. Look what automation has done. Get the drone program. There's a lot of opportunities out there for you to set up, and you'll find out that the services, my son has experienced that, when you get ready to leave the service, there's opportunities to do a time with a civilian firm to see if you like it, and if they like you, and you can get hired right out of that. So there are a lot of programs available. Don't discourse those. Don't discard those and say, no, I don't want to go because I don't want to be in the Army as an infantryman, or I don't want to do that. Take a look at each of those services and see what they have to offer and what you offer them, and you might find a match.
That is great advice. So their approach to the military should be the same as their approach to any other field of work, potential career, and that would be to find out what kind of work is indeed involved in choosing that pathway.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, great. We have a question here that is probably too big for the time we have left, but maybe you can share some fun memories with us, and maybe some serious memories as well. One of our viewers asked, how overall would you say that the Medal of Honor has impacted your life?
It certainly has. I think you've got to be cognizant. You've got to be aware of the fact of what you represent, and that kind of sets the pace for how you're going to act and what you're going to do. And you've got to constantly go over that because you live in a glass house. And Red Medal of Honor recipients are real people. They trip, they fall, they stumble, but you've got to be careful, and you've got to remember that you're the messenger. You represent the sacrifice and dedication of all the men and women that have served and are serving, will serve. And so you've got to go out as that messenger, and you've got to deliver that message in the right way to the right people.
You mentioned earlier, when you talked about the day that you were awarded the medal, that it was the first time you'd been closer than helicopter distance to the president. But ever since then, you've been going to the biggest presidential parties of all, the inaugurations. How has that been?
I'll tell you, that's been fantastic. That's once again, it's an opportunity that is one that you need to take a look at and be involved in, because it gives you a chance. We had sessions with the various presidents of the United States, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or public, and it's a chance to go in for the inauguration, go in there because that's a fantastic time for you to see how everything works, and you can really meet a lot of people that are in great positions, and you might even have the opportunity to sit down with the president, the newly elected president. So it didn't matter to me whether the president was either party. It was just the fact that we were invited to go to the inauguration. It was a first-class act, and it was most enjoyable.
Was there one in particular that stood out for you? Any particular inauguration at which you had the most fun?
Well, I tell you that.
Without giving away any bad secrets.
Yeah. Well, we were in Washington, and we were there for the Honor program, and it was President Trump had contacted the society and said, "Hey, you guys are in town. How about stopping by and seeing me?" And here's the President of the United States said, "Stop on by to see me." And I said, "Well, my God, I'm telling you." So we did. And, he invited us and there were no strap hangers, no reporters. And he talked about, veterans and the importance of service. And it doesn't matter what you think of President Trump. At that time, he was right there. He was being a real person. And I felt very, very, very pleased and proud to be able to sit in with the president. And when one of his aides come in and say, "The press would like to talk to you, Mr. President, about this issue." And he said, "Well, the first thing I want to do is make sure these Medal of Honor recipients are done talking with me, and I want them out of here, because otherwise the damn press will associate the Medal of Honor with some decision I'm supposed to be making, and it won't be positive." So that's how gracious he was, and it was kind of unique, and I enjoyed it. I really did.
Well, that is great to hear. One of the things that our listeners might not be aware of is that evidently it's not law, but it's tradition that the president, whoever the seated president is, salutes Medal of Honor recipients, and that respect that he showed you, I'm so glad to hear about that. Have you been to the White House for any other Medal of Honor award ceremonies?
Yes, I've been to several of them. And again, we have the opportunity to talk to the new recipient before he goes in for the actual formal ceremony, and talk to his spouse if he's married, and talk to him a little bit about helping them out when they come on board, because it's an awesome experience, and we understand that, having been through it ourselves. So going in and seeing recipients receive their medal for their actions in combat is really a privilege and a pleasure for me. We try to normally have so many seats. We try to spread the wealth so different recipients may go to the particular ceremonies and have the opportunity to talk to the new recipients one-on-one. So it really is fantastic to be able to do that.
So one of the things that has come up throughout our visit today is both the relationship you had with your fellow service members and with the older Medal of Honor recipients, and now you were just talking about your relationship with the younger Medal of Honor recipients. And I would point out to our audience that when we're talking about younger and older, we're not talking about 5 or 10 years difference. We're talking about the difference. There were still World War I recipients alive, Hal, when you were awarded your medal in 1970, I believe, 71.
Yeah, 71.
Right. And now it's the newest Medal of Honor recipients tend to be 40 or more years younger than those of you who were awarded your medals in Vietnam. Do you have any thoughts about the connections that you have that go beyond age and race and background and branch of military, of what's universal and what is important to all of you?
I think the common thread amongst recipients is that we have a great love for this country, and we're very patriotic, and we know the importance of getting out and talking to the young people about the future of this country, because of what we have seen and what we see and what we think they can do. And I think there's a group out there And I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you had two adversaries, instead of throwing bombs at one another, they could sit across the table and decide what to do and sign a document that says we won't go to war. And we can take all that money that we spend for materials of war and put that into use to find a cure for cancer, Alzheimer's, or something. I won't see that in my lifetime. I won't see. I'm 77 because there are too many dictatorships out there, too many dictators out there that want to fight war. But there's young people out there. There's young people that are in our education system right now, and that's my challenge to them. If we could do that, wouldn't that be great for the world? Not just for this country, but for the world. We could set the example. So that's my challenge to you. See, let's turn this thing around, and you young people can do it. I mean, there's some brilliant young people out there, and they're going to be the people making the decisions, calling the shots. So let's have that happen. So that's my message.
I really appreciate that. I was just taking a quick look at a couple more questions that are coming in, and I want to point out that we're almost out of time. Noel is answering a few questions on the side. Someone asked about women Medal of Honor recipients, and I just want to point out to our audience that there has been only one thus far, Mary Walker from the Civil War, and that was because the medal has been historically, at least since World War I, a combat medal. But now that women are allowed in combat, the awarding could change. There's history on that to look at outside of this webinar. We also have a question about whether there was any particular Medal of Honor recipient, Hal, who made a particular impression on you. And then I've got one last question to wrap up with. So any particular Medal of Honor recipient that comes to mind that stands out?
Yeah, there's several. Don Rudolph's World War II. And Don Rudolph had a fantastic mind. He's not with us any longer. Don was an Army recipient, but he knew every family and birthdays and grandchildren and where they lived, where they moved to. And it's just an example. He's just one. But a lot of the older recipients were like that. And he said, how in the hell can he keep on? How can he keep in his head, you know? So Don Rudolph really made a great impression on me. And another one that I taught your dad, Walt Allers. You know, he never said it's too tough. I'll be there. What do we need? And here's a man that's on dialysis, for God's sake. And he never complained. He never said anything but, I'll do it. I'll be there. How you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? He'd say. Well, I'm doing fine. What about you? I'm doing okay too. No problem. You know. So those are two people that I recall that I certainly gained an awful lot of respect for.
Oh well, and thank you for the kind words about my dad. I appreciate that. When you mentioned Don Rudolph and him remembering everything, Joe Jackson was like that too. You didn't tell him anything you didn't want him to remember. He had a steel trap of a mind. Absolutely. Very definitely. The one last question I think we'd like to wrap up with is that one of our teachers asked, and you've addressed this now here and there throughout your talk, and I appreciate it. Any particular comments for students about how they can be day-to-day heroes, how they can live these values in their everyday lives?
Just look at that. Look at the common things that you do. Don't be afraid to extend a hand out. If it's at home, you're helping unload groceries. If you're holding the door for somebody, you're saying thank you. You see a service member, you say thank you for your service. Just those ordinary things make us all extraordinary Americans. And that's what you can do. You don't have to do it. You don't have to run through town with a horn blaring and a speaker on a vehicle. Just be yourself. Reach out there and extend that hand when somebody needs help. Say hello. Say I love you. God dang, talk to your parents too. They get a tough life. Just be all you can be. The Army used to say that. Be all you can be. And I say that to you too.
That's great. Thank you so much. We are out of time, so I'm going to turn it back over to Noel to offer some closing information to our viewers. But Hal Fritz, you have been a delight to talk with. As always, I appreciate it, and our students, I know, appreciate it as well. I hope we can do this again.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Hal. Thank you, all of us, for joining us today. We hope that you will learn more about our programs, learn more about the Medal of Honor. You can visit our website, which is cmohs.org. You can find a lot of links at that paperclip that is on the dock at the bottom of your screen. On our website, you can access our new online trading portal, see all of our lessons, learn more information about Medal of Honor recipients like Hal Fritz and many of the recipients who were mentioned on the webinar today. Details about upcoming webinars. You can view our past webinars there as well, and sign up for our newsletter list to be the first to know about opportunities like this or new lessons and resources that we have available. We also want to thank our donors who make webinars like this possible and all the programs that we do possible. You'll see their names on the screen here and information about contacting our Executive Director of Philanthropy for more information. Again, we thank you all for your time today, for joining us for this webinar, and we hope to see you on a future webinar.